Welcome to a very special episode of LMG Presents Marvel Multiverse RPG. My name is Jordan, and I'm not joined by the usual gang that I have today. Like I said, if you can tell by the title, it's a very special person. Um, Fuzzy on the details. I managed to get him. How are you doing today, Fuzzy?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I've definitely listened to your the podcast a number of times. Been listening to your Cataclysm of Kang uh, uh,
Thank you.
sessions. I think I mentioned to you earlier your Father's Day conversation, which had nothing to do with MMRPG, but I was enjoying that as well. So yeah, honored to be on.
Thank you. And I mean, I have been watching you since I first found out about the game. You are like you were like I mean, you were the very first video I watched on even how to start a game. I found another video, another YouTube channel on how to start even using like any virtual tabletops. Like before, I had never even played any of it. So your channel has helped me out a lot, and I've definitely watched probably almost all your videos at this point.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So you do great work.
Thanks.
Um,
And it's
so
hey, it's I have absolutely no idea what the heck I'm doing. I've been learning these skills as I've been going on. So for for anyone out there who's maybe a little bit afraid of getting something started, I've just found it to be so rewarding to just dive in, learn the skills as you go and it can be a lot of fun. And I think this game needs content creators out there getting the good word out. So if anyone out there is feeling anxious about maybe getting something started, give it a shot.
I agree. I do think there needs to be more content out there. I when I first found out about the game, I was like, "Oh man, I'm so far behind." There's probably so many people playing, and I was very surprised. Like when I first started playing, like the only thing out was, Cataclysm of Kang. It was also the Hydra adventure, and then
Hmm.
the Murder World adventure. I thought it was going to be so much out there, but I realized like the game is still pretty new, so there's so much content out there for people to still get and consume. There's new content coming out all the time. I mean, we just had the X-Men book drop. We
Hmm.
just had the Deadpool adventure drop. Like it's so much stuff out here still.
Yeah, and the growth of the game has been interesting to say the least. I mean, I felt such a bump happen at Gen Con this year.
Hmm.
Um, a- and things, I think you're right. Things felt a little slow maybe just before then. People were waiting for sort of the next big thing. And then boom, boom, you've got two not only big releases, but great
Yes.
releases. I mean, those books are by any measure just really high quality books. And for me, that got me like that invigorated me even more. It felt like, all right, I'm putting all my free time into this, and I feel like almost like rewarded. Like, oh, this is great. I get to really sink my teeth into fun new mechanics, new
Yes.
types of content, not just another adventure like Cataclysm of Kang, a completely new type of adventure. And that to me, that's exciting to see that there's such creativity coming into the game, not just content.
Yes. And I feel like right now, like I feel like I'm playing catch up. Like my group now, we're going through Cataclysm King. We've already done the Murder World. So I'm just like, okay, now I gotta hit Hydra next. But I'm like, oh, the X-Men book dropped. I was like, I gotta start preparing for the X-Men book because we talked about this a little bit before. We're X-Men fans,
Yeah.
and when I saw that, I was like, oh, well, I have to do it. Like I almost didn't start Cataclysm of Kang because the X-Men book was coming out, but I was like, I should probably go ahead and start it because if I don't start now, I was like, I know I'm going to ignore Kang just because the X-Men is going to take my whole life.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it depends on the type of game you want to play. I think for some people, maybe if you don't have a lot of experience with role-playing games,
Hmm.
and I've talked to a lot of people that have told me things like, "Hey, I'm 40 years old. I haven't played D&D since I was a teenager, and I'm trying to get used to it. Is this a good game for me?" And it's like, "Oh my God, it's the best game
I
for
would
you."
agree. This is I did not play Dungeon Dragon. I've never played an RPG tabletop game before. Like I'm a narrator. Like this is my first time ever narrating, and it was one of those things. Like I've always been interested in doing Dungeons and Dragons, but it's like growing up, it was like not really accepted for me to do that. So I was like,
Right.
once I got older, I'm like, okay, I don't really care what people think anymore. And then a Marvel version came out. I was like, oh yeah, I'm jumping in. I'm diving in.
Yeah, and you are absolutely not alone. And I found that people take to the narration way better than, say, DMing in
Hmm.
D&D or running a Pathfinder game because those games are, I've played Pathfinder uh, 1 and 2 since the playtest for one. Um, and that's a complicated game. Now, I like that. Like I like all types of games. So for Pathfinder, I really like the crunch, but it takes somebody who really can invest some time into learning the game, learning the rules to be a GM for that game. I don't think you could be a good Pathfinder GM without having that experience of playing the game. It would be very difficult
Hmm.
for you to do that. But I don't think that's the case with MMRPG because it's not like there are a lot of special rules you have to know as a narrator that you don't have to know as a player.
Yeah.
In fact, in some ways, you've got less to worry about because you're probably not worrying about karma. You're not worrying about team maneuvers. So
Yeah.
there's almost less on your mind. Like you're playing more streamlined characters. Sure, you got to keep the plot straight, but I mean, come on, if you've read a comic book or watched a MCU movie, you you know what a Marvel plot is. You could
Right.
probably make that up in your sleep. Yeah, for me, it's honestly a joy running. I've said this before, but I genuinely have more fun running MMRPG than I do playing because I get to play all the characters I want
Yeah, that is
when I'm
very
the
true.
narrator.
Yes. Yeah, and it's like I also love I was so nervous running my first game because I'm just like, what am I going to do if someone throws a snag at me and like I don't know how to respond? But just like once I'm in it, it's like if you have like a little bit of imagination, if you know kind of how comics works, like you mentioned, it's like I can come up with something on the spot. One of my first big twists was when one of the players was like, I want to clear out, Nani's restaurant. He was like, okay, can we just set out the fire alarm? And I was like, oh man, I was like, can he? I was like, you know what? Go for it. If you can do it, go for it. And I was like, okay. Once I got past that, I was like, okay, I can just make up stuff on the fly. And it's also, they are making up stuff on the fly as well. So it's like, for me,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to respond. And it's really fun actually being a narrator. I was so nervous at first, though.
Yeah. And in a way, going back to the Kang versus X-Men debate, that's almost a point for, hey, just play with X-Men because you can make up your own stories. Like they give you so many adventure hooks without
Hmm.
the full details. And I think the idea of having a vague sense of the campaign you want to play, maybe having some bad guys in mind off to the side, the sheet's ready to take them out if you need them, but not really writing down point by point everything that's going to happen. That just frees things up. I mean, I've for the for the Blood Hunt game I've been running, I only have an extremely loose draft of what I think might happen that game. And
Hmm.
I have a sense of what the end is, and I have 14 different ways that possibly the characters might get from point A to point Z. And
Yeah.
I do not prescribe anything along the way. And in many ways, I'm happy because they always have a way of surprising me and doing something a little different. So if I had planned everything out precisely, maybe you're like, maybe I need to railroad them back onto the plot train. No matter how good, no matter how slick you might think you are when you're trying to do that to a group of players, I think they feel it.
Yeah.
But when, as a narrator, you just embrace that and you say, whatever you want to do. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, whatever you want to do. You want to like early in the game, I won't give any spoilers for where we are now, but they could have picked up and gone to England if they wanted to. They could have said, "Hey, let's figure out what's going on in New York City. We're stuck up here in Boston. I'd be like, fine, that's great." And then the campaign would have had a completely different plot from that point, but I would have been happy to do
Yeah.
it. And it would have been fun no matter what they do. So yeah, I just think there's such a freedom in that. And then if you're playing Kang, I guess if you're not, I mean, I've been running games since I was, since 1987. So, those improv muscles, I guess, are toned.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about practicing that. I've embraced that kind of gameplay my whole life. But if you're new, then maybe an adventure like Kang that does spell out for you, here are all of the things that are going to happen. Uh, Maybe that would be a little better. So yeah, it's just it's awesome to have those options though.
Yeah. I guess let me back up now.
Yeah.
So, what kind of hobbies do you have? What do you enjoy doing kind of outside of, tabletop gaming?
Yeah. So I'd say, well, I got two kids, 8 and 13 at this point. So that's a good chunk of my time
Yeah,
is
I
with
get
them.
that. I am
Yep.
also a father. I get
Yep.
that.
As it should be, right? So I tend to involve them in everything that I do. But I also enjoy spending quite a bit of time outside, not so much in the summer, but once fall and winter comes around, I'm I like going up to the mountains. I do quite a bit of hunting, hiking, spending a lot of time outdoors. I take
Okay,
my kids with me, so they've been there, not out in the woods hunting with me, but hanging out in deer camp each year and helping me out. So I like getting
nice.
both of them involved in that kind of stuff.
Nice. Okay. One of my favorite videos you did because I want to eventually get to this point. So I have a 9-year-old and I have a
Mm.
5-year old. I'm debating on trying to get my 9-year old to start playing with me. And you actually did a video where you did it. And I was like,
Yep.
I would love to do that because on the podcast, I mean, all of us we are fathers, so we always
Yeah.
talk about fatherhood a lot.
Hmm.
And so I was like, that is an excellent way to kind of bond with your kids. And so I was like, I really want to get my kid to do that. How did you go about doing that? Like, did you just like I know you let her pick the player.
Yeah.
Did you have to explain what did you have to explain to her, and how did you easily explain it to her?
Yeah. So she had, I think the first game she played was Monty Cook's Say No to Evil, which is a game that's specifically designed for younger kids. So we started playing that at about 5 or 6,
Hmm.
just to get her introduced. But what I found, and I think this is an important lesson no matter what age of player you've got, but as a narrator, you've got to learn each player and learn what they enjoy out of the game. And I was surprised that my sweet little baby girl loved just beating the crap out of people. I mean, I thought she was going to be Marvel Girl, Moon Girl. Moon Girl, especially, like, we love the cartoons. We've got all of the comics. Uh, I even have like a big red dinosaur
Yeah.
that we could use.
I actually found
Uh,
myself enjoying that show too, by the way.
oh
I
my God,
my
everything
my
about
kid,
that show is
I
fantastic.
didn't think I was gonna like it, but yes, when my daughter put it on, I was like, "Oh, this is actually pretty good."
I'm not afraid to say I might have teared up a couple of times in some of those episodes, especially the first season. Yeah, I just an absolutely fantastic show. If anyone hasn't seen it, check it out. It's
Yes,
the
I agree.
music is it's incredible. It's
Yes,
incredibly high production values, excellent voice actors. You take a look at the IMDb, you're going to go, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. Every episode, another big name in terms of the voice acting. Yeah, just really, really high production value. So she loves that Squirrel Girl. We love Squirrel Girl. So I'm thinking it's going to be this kind of light, fun game. And then she decides she wants to play X-23
ooh,
and she just wants to slice people apart. I'm like, okay, let's roll with it. Um, and speaking of rolling with it, another thing I figured out is she didn't really like the role playing aspect too much, but she loved rolling the dice. So when I
Okay.
play with her, I make sure I'm like, oh, if too much time goes by and I haven't asked her to roll some dice, I might just say make a vigilance check just to have her roll some dice and
Yeah.
get that sort of tactile feeling. Playing with miniatures, super important for her. Uh, Theater of the mind, not going to happen for another 10 years, maybe with her.
Yeah.
Uh, but really having, the fingers on the mini, moving it around. This is what I do. She loves picking the miniatures up and stuff. So once I learned that, it was very easy for me to create the kind of game that she would enjoy. Um, and the other thing I would say is patience. Uh,
Yes.
you know,
They're kids.
I have the luxury of editing quite a bit. So, there might have been a couple times where I might have had to get up and just walk around and be like, all right, calm down, fuzzy. Um, because she just wasn't, just typical kid stuff, just wasn't listening to me. Had nothing to do with the game. So again, I get to edit all that out and show people only the absolute best of both of us, more editing me out than her. She's the one, she's fine. It's more about my poor reactions sometimes. Uh, but I think you're always learning and relearning that lesson as a father, right? How to truly be patient and kind of slow yourself down and be present, and
Yes.
that's a great lesson that I have the wonderful opportunity to learn and relearn whenever I sit down and play with her.
So was D&D your first kind of tabletop game, or what was your first introduction kind of to
Yeah.
tabletop?
All right, I'll tell you a funny story because you mentioned something about D&D not really being accepted,
Yes.
right? So yeah, my first D&D experience was 1987. So this is Satanic Panic
Right.
peak, right? And there was one, it was Christmas of 1987, and my mom finally got tired of trying to pick out presents for us and my sister and I got one sibling. I was 13, she was 11, and she just gave us 20 bucks a piece and said, just you, go to the toy store and buy each other a present. You know, okay. So my sister and I, of course, immediately colluded and said, what do you
Right.
want?
What do you
What do
want?
you want? All right. So I went for a D&D book, and it was the Forgotten Realms gray box that I think had just come out, if I recall. The great Clyde Caldwell art on the front. And my sister got a Ouija board.
Oh
So it
boy.
was like
Eh,
the first moment of
oh
financial,
man.
independence we had. It was like boom, right to Satan, at least in my mom's eyes at the time. But yeah, so that was 1987, and typical playing in the basement with a bunch of the neighborhood, kids.
Yeah.
Uh, did that all through, through high school. College, I started playing a couple other games. Once Vampire the Masquerade came out, played that. Was really into Werewolf. Really love Werewolf. What else? Old school. First edition Twilight 2000 I played, which is a very tactical, crunchy
So you've been
game.
playing, a long time.
Oh yeah, and of course all of the Phase Rip, the TSR, Marvel games, all of those games. I have a binder upstairs that I recently found in my attic that I was statting up all of these teams that like there was this one team. Oh crap, I'm blanking out on their name. I'll have to look it up, but it was like it must have been during like the Gulf War or something because it was like this Middle Eastern team of villains. And I remember one of them was called Scirocco, and I had all of these characters written down, complete nobodies. I don't remember the last time they were ever in a comic book, but
Yeah.
I had stats up for them. So even back then, I
Just
really
like the
loved these
one-off
like,
characters.
yeah, these lesser known characters. I really enjoy statting them up. And so yeah, that was something I've enjoyed since I was a kid.
How did you get started on, the Marvel Multiverse RPG? And when did you find out about it?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I didn't know about it during the playtest.
Okay.
Even though I'm the target audience, right? diehard Marvel fan.
Yeah.
Always have been. Don't collect any DC.
I
If
feel
you
I feel the
if
same way. That's
if you
a
ask
cussing word.
oh
That's a
you
naughty
if you
word
ask
around
my
here.
kid, what do you think about, who do you think would win, X-23 or Superman? She'd be like, F Superman. Except
Yeah.
she wouldn't say F.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
indoctrinating my kids too. I get it.
Oh yeah. So just absolutely die hard, and and a role player my whole life. So it was, and in a way it was kind of weird. I'm like, why am I only hearing about this now? How come I didn't? I would have loved to take part in the playtest. Like I mentioned, I've done plenty of playtests before. I did the playtest for first edition Pathfinder. Uh, Enjoyed the process of cracking open the rules, trying to figure out where they break down a little bit, and then most importantly, offering suggestions of how it might work better.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that process. So, yeah. So, but I bought the game, as soon as it came out. Uh, on the first day it was out, and same thing for Kang and all the other books. Um, and I guess especially for Pathfinder, and I stopped playing D&D when 3.5 ended, and D&D 3.5 kind of melded into first edition Pathfinder. I just immediately jumped on the Pathfinder boat and just kept sailing.
Yes.
Um, and I kind of knew the type of content that I really liked for that game. Um, and and the type that maybe I didn't like. And after playing, I guess for about 4 months or so, maybe a little bit more, 4 or 5 months, it started to hit me like, wow, there really isn't a lot of, content out there for the game. And some of it, especially from the folks maybe that had channels that weren't dedicated to it, they just were generic gaming channels.
Yeah. I kind of mentioned it.
Yeah, and I would hear people, you know, do a how to play and get so much stuff wrong, just like absolutely wrong. And it kind of ticked me off a little bit. So it was almost like my exasperation, and I was like mentally to myself complaining, I can't believe this person said that thing or had this negative thing to say. And maybe it was my Marvel, fanboyism kind of bubbling up. I'm sure that has something to do with it, but that just got me to, finally I was kind of complaining internally so much. I said, like, you better either shut up or do something. But it's like whining is getting you nowhere. So I said,
Yeah.
all right, I'll give it a shot. And uh, like my first couple of videos, I didn't do it the traditional way because I didn't want to do how to play. I felt like I wasn't maybe, I don't know, maybe I wasn't really qualified to do something like that, but I felt like I could really focus in on one area of the rules that really needed that attention. So I think my first video was just on karma because I felt actually a lot of people were getting karma wrong, just
Hmm.
messing the rules up. There were a couple of things at that point. The errata hadn't been officially announced regarding how to calculate the amount of health or focus that you recover when you make a recovery check by spending a point of karma. That errata hadn't been released, but Matt Forbeck had put something out in a Facebook post saying, yep, there was an error there. We said total up all the numbers. You don't do that anywhere in the game. That was just a mistake. You just use the Marvel die, calculate it normally like you would damage or anything
Yeah.
else. So for me, it was like I wanted to boost that. Like I wanted to be useful, right? I didn't think my opinion was worth anything. So I'm like, let me lead with fact and analysis, and we'll go from there. I still don't think my opinion is worth anything if I don't back it up with something. So I
Right.
try to have that approach um of and I do this in my videos. It's like, here's the screenshot, right? Right out of demo, cut and paste, right out of demo
Which I
plan.
really do. I really do enjoy that too. It's like when you're explaining something, I can visually see it and I can
Yeah.
visually read it to myself while you're also talking about it. So I do enjoy that. So you really
Yeah.
started your YouTube channel kind of once you got going with the game.
Yeah. I got going. Yeah. I had been playing a little. I wouldn't say a ton,
Hmm.
but yeah, I would say playing a lot at home. Playing a lot at home. I wasn't able to convince many of my regular gaming friends to jump on board because we had some existing Pathfinder games that were going on. And then at one point, one of those games wrapped up. Then it was a Kingmaker game. We'd been playing it for 8 years.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it was insane that we actually got through all books and the campaign didn't explode, 7 years back.
Yeah,
But
right now at this point in my, I guess, narrating career, like I cannot imagine going
yeah,
8 years.
same group of people, same
Oh,
group of people,
that's
and
also pretty amazing too.
yeah. But yeah, sometimes we would go a month and a half without playing because this person's on a vacation,
Right,
holidays come around, everything dies. But we stuck to it. But after that, it was like, okay, now that we're done, we're gonna be playing, at least with some of you, like I'm gonna be playing Marvel. If you want to play with me, that's fine. You can do whatever you want, but I felt like I earned being a little greedy
right.
there and saying we're gonna play what I want to play.
I am while you were talking, it's like I was thinking like I remember coming to like my comic book store and I was like, yo, like, do you guys have any of this Marvel Multiverse stuff? And like even they didn't know what it was. So I was like, I wonder what is going like to me the game is not as big as I thought. Like I said, I thought
Mm.
it was going to be major, especially with Marvel pushing it the way they were pushing it, or they still are pushing it. So
Yeah.
it's like I'm still like introducing people to the concept of what the game is. So I'm like, yeah, I thought everyone knew about the game, and I thought I was behind.
Yeah, I have some guesses as to what happened, and this truly is not any insider information. But I suspect that they were being very conservative with how much they were pushing and how much they were investing to see what the initial
Interest level
response
was.
would be.
Hmm.
And that's based on knowing that they've already done a couple of reprints of the book. Right?
Hmm.
And sometimes you can easily go a full year. A Pathfinder or something might go a full, might not get the second printing or the third printing out, but they did. So that tells me they were pretty conservative with how many they published. But I think they can be. I mean, they're Marvel. They print books all the time. They have
Right.
a great long-term relationship with Penguin Random House.
Yep.
Um, so I'm sure they've got great deals and they don't have to worry about their margins too much on that side. So I get the sense that they were somewhat conservative early on, waited to see how things, how the market responded. And then it seems like once they hit the new calendar year, you could start seeing the investments popping up. You could start seeing whether it was the things they've been doing with the glass cannon,
Yeah.
the new how-to video they put out. If you guys haven't seen it yet, check it out.
Yeah,
It's
that was a pretty
on the
good video.
Marvel Entertainment video, but it's with Troy and Sid from the glass cannon. And it's just a great video. And I've heard a lot of people say that their wife walked into the room, or in my case, my 13-year-old walked into the room, saw them playing that and or talking about it and listened to them way more than she's ever listened to me. And then all of a sudden, oh, I want to, can I start playing with you guys again? I'm like, yes, you can. Of course you can. So we started up a new game with new players just so she can get involved. And that was all because uh, she would watch some of the Pathfinder games that Glass Cannon plays, and having two girls and Glass Cannon does such a great job of having that. If I think they aim for like 50-50 in pretty much all of their shows. So having
Yeah.
having women up there playing the game for younger girls
It makes a
makes
difference.
a huge difference.
Yes, I 100% agree.
Absolute huge difference. So yeah, so I think that's great. Uh, and yeah, just a tremendous video. That wasn't free, right? Glass Cannon doesn't do things for free, nor should they. So it was nice to see that investment. And then, all the way Gen Con went and the sort of hints we have of what's still to come for the rest of the year
Yes.
is great.
One of the things you talk about, kind of the quality, I was listening to your interview you did the other day with CJ.
Mhm.
Um, the quality of these books, I think, are just fantastic. Like the way they feel just real amazing just to kind of crack it open and just get the feel for the pages.
Oh,
Like
it's
I'm just like,
stupid good.
it feels
I mean,
really good.
I can't tell you how many, like picking up another book and then going to this book. I can't tell you how many times I've kind of done that thing where I rub the page between my index finger and my thumb, trying to split the pages because I'm like, clearly I have two pages here that are stuck together. And I look at it and I have to flip the page. Nope, I went from 55 to 57. That's just one page I see here. It's just that thick. It feels like two pages between my fingers.
One of the things
It's
I
amazing.
And one of the things I really like is like when I have the books on my shelf, I love seeing the little 616 kind of lined up right there. Like
Yeah.
it looks really good on the shelf. I was like, oh, and it made me excited for the Spider-Man because I'm like, I know they're gonna put the 616 right there, and I know they're gonna have a little Spider-Man logo right
Oh,
above, kind of where they have the X-Men one.
100%. Oh yeah. And it's great. They think about, I'm looking behind me right now. The people on the podcast can't see, but I'm looking behind you and we can see all the books lined up and they just look so nice
Yes,
when you've given it that thought, the way the books look up on a shelf. And that's yeah, that's just really nice to see. And hearing his story about how they went into a bookstore and started, filling up all these books like some perverts or something,
I
like
do.
walking like,
When he
here,
said that, when he said that, I just imagine someone like in the background watching him, like, what are these guys doing, touching all the pages
it's,
to these books?
I
And
was
I was like,
so close.
that's embarrassing
I
almost. But I was
was
like, that's
so close to saying something inappropriate on that interview. I'm glad I wasn't the only one,
no, I
but
just
that's
thought that
funny,
was such
right?
a weird thing. But I was like,
But
that's
that's
part of it.
amazing.
It got it to work.
It's amazing, right? Like, it's like if you see some grandma in the fruit section of a supermarket, knocking on the watermelons
Trying to get
or
that right one.
the avocados or holding up the different colors and like, yeah, she's coming home with the best fruit and
Yeah.
veggies possible. So, she's not doing it just for her health. Yeah, just the amount of time and love that they put into that selection for something like paper is indicative of how good the product is. And it's throughout the rest of the book. I mean, the art is
Oh yes.
just just great. The layout's great. I even think like the ratio of rules to, of crunch to fluff is great. There's not much I would change in this book. I
Agreed.
even can't argue with everyone's always going to have a character maybe that they really wanted to see in the book that wasn't there, but in a way that's good because if you
Mhm.
had absolutely every character that you wanted was in that book, then what are they going to put in the
Then yeah,
next one,
right. What's
right?
funny is like just off the top of my head, I was like looking at the X-Men characters. I was like, yeah, there was a couple characters in there missing, but I was like, they have every character that I honestly would probably really want to play. And like they have some other ones that has me interested, like Domino, the whole luck thing. Like I am excited to get to play with Domino and just
Oh,
test
me
the
too.
luck power. I'm just like, that is a great kind of new power mechanic to introduce.
Oh, it's great. The healing powers too, and even I mean, like I told CJ, like you really start thinking about how these powers work together,
Oh yes.
and it's like I'm telling you, you got to go back to your CRB and take a look at some of those old powers, maybe that you weren't thinking about
Yeah.
using for a while, and start thinking about how they work with the luck powers.
Yes.
It's really going to change. Or look at the old characters and think, what if I yanked a couple of these powers that maybe I haven't used when I've played this particular character before, and give them healing. Give them something from the healing set, because it's not like the healing powers uh, are like these are all flavored as these magical powers. Like one of them's let's go. How is that any different than do this all day? It's the
Right.
same flavor. So yeah, why not give one of your characters, if they're a kind of a frontline type fighter, maybe, or even somebody who's been in the military and knows how, like, if you were to homebrew a Punisher because he's not in the game
I
yet.
was literally thinking Punisher in my head. I was like, could you
If
imagine like using a luck power with Punisher, like Crossbones or some character like that? Like, oh, it's gonna be good.
Why not though? Why not? I mean, part of it, right? You think about it, like how has the Punisher survived for as long as he
Oh,
has?
yeah,
And you can
for real.
think about it, like you can think about it in just as a comic book reader. And this is actually in the lore. He talks about like why does he wear the skull and stuff? And it's one of two things. It's to scare the hell out of his enemies. But also there was one comic where I remember reading it was like because he wants to draw fire to the chest
Hmm.
where he's got the Kevlar versus the face where he doesn't. So having the big skull, he wants people to shoot him there.
You're right.
So isn't that in a way like a little bit like luck, like the luck mechanic? Like you're not getting those headshots. You're deliberately drawing fire to a part of your body that where you can take the hits. Why not just call that luck?
Yeah. What are some of your favorite characters that you kind of played with so far? Well, actually, two-part
Hmm.
question that you've played with so far, and who are some of your favorite characters in Marvel in general?
Okay. So I would say so I mean, just a lot of the X-Men, just period.
Yes, yes,
I
that's me too.
Laura Kinney is way up there for me. I mean, growing up, huge Wolverine fan.
Oh, me
A-
too.
As a short, hairy kid, boy, loved him.
Yeah. Oh, I love Wolverine. He is like, oh, he is such an amazing character.
Yeah, but if you think about it, at least for I'm 49, right? So growing up, I remember when the Marvel Comics Presents Weapon X came out, the Barry
Hmm.
Windsor Smith art and everything. That was just like lore that was kind of getting added on to him. Like they had no idea what his background was when he first appeared. Even in those early Chris Claremont issues where he first joined the team, it was they were making it up as they went along.
Right. They really didn't kind of put his background out into the Origins comic book.
Yeah.
Like, and that was a long time after the character was even created.
Yeah. And still, even after you're reading that, you're like, wait a minute, is Silver Fox, was that real? You know, I, so like it was fun to learn that stuff as you went along. But I felt like once I first started reading X-23, I felt like her core character was like locked in from day one. So I always felt like she was a more consistent, uh, well thought out, holistically created kind of character than Logan was.
Yeah.
So I just had a deeper appreciation for her. And I know some people might be down on her because they think, oh, she's not really Wolverine. And it's like, well, no, she kind of really is, genetically speaking.
Right. And
Like,
I honestly think after kind of Wolverine died in the comics and she got a chance to like really flush out like that All New Wolverine series, like really flush out a character. And even in the most recent kind of House of X stuff, like I've really enjoyed her a lot
mm.
too. Like she was with I think it's like the Children of the Vault or something like that. She was really good in that series as well.
Well, as of the time we're recording, NYX issue 2 just came out.
Hmm.
And so it's her, Ms. Marvel, Sophie from
Yeah.
the Cuckoo Sisters, Anole, and Prodigy are the five in that team. And Laura's just awesome. I mean, she's just awesome in that comic book. Just I the second issue, it was focused on her. Freaking love that issue. She's such a badass. But like she also, because I think because of Logan, she can kind of turn it off in a way that Logan never could,
Yeah.
right? Logan, even when he did, like, how does he turn things off? By drinking and getting in bar fights and smoking cigars. That's not healthy for a 13-year-old kid to read, but like, not a spoiler, but with this issue, like she's kind of not having a good time of things, and the way she kind of resets is by going to a club and dancing with Ms. Marvel and the rest of them. And it's like, wow, I have such an appreciation for writing a character like that that doesn't have to be like, don't get me wrong, love Logan, love the Punisher, but let's face it, they're more one-dimensional,
Right.
right? And that can be great in a character, but I don't want all of my characters to be like that. So I appreciate that X-23 is the type of character that it's like a what if. What if Logan had parents
Right.
to give him advice? And in a way, it's a great story. And that the comic book that you mentioned earlier that's behind me is of Logan and Jubilee hugging each other. And just as a dad, I love the fact that before X-23 was around, Logan was almost practicing how to be a dad
You are
by
100% correct.
just having these wholesome paternal relationships with whether it's Jubilee, Shadowcat, whoever, just like taking care of these little, kids.
Right. Because he
Uh,
appears to be like just such the feral monster killer, but just
yeah,
like he has the soft side to him, and these paternal, kids bring it out of him.
yeah, yeah. So to see him get to have some of those conversations with her, whether it was in some of the X-Force episodes or issues rather, or even in some of the all new Wolverine comics, uh, there's a few just great moments of them together. And some of them, I think she's like hallucinating as she's like slowly bleeding out or dying, or a healing factor is just trying to kick in to keep her alive. Uh, but yeah, it's just that element of her. She wasn't always on great terms with her dad, right? But getting on those good terms, and even with Dakin too,
Yes.
seeing that relationship having its ups and downs. Um, and it makes me enjoy Wolverine more. So for anyone, for people who I think like shit on X-23 because I think she makes Wolverine a better character,
Yeah.
hands
I
down, hands down
yes.
makes him a better
I
character.
feel that way kind of about all the surrounding characters kind of around Wolverine. Is like you mentioned, if you think about down to the core, he is a one-dimensional character, but then you start adding in all these other characters around him, it starts to flesh him out even more,
Yeah,
even more. Just the new relationships built, him and Scott's relationship up and down, but at the end of the day, these guys are brothers. Like they
yeah,
they have a love for each other. And so that's one of the things I really like, that when you surround Wolverine with really other good characters, it brings them out even more.
yeah. So what other characters? Love, you mentioned Domino earlier. Love Domino, always have. It's funny, I never was much of a Peter Parker Spider-Man fan,
Hmm.
but I definitely like Miles and Gwen better than Peter Parker,
I
without a
always
doubt.
been on the fence. I was for a long time, I was Peter Parker, and then I was Miles, and then I went back to Peter Parker. It's like I keep flipping back and forth.
Yeah,
I cannot decide on who I like more. I think currently it's Peter for me. But I think Peter for me also, if you give me a really good costume as well, and of course Peter been around all these years, the
yeah,
costumes always get it for me.
yeah. Blade has always been up there, and that just goes back to like the movies. Like
Yes.
I still, you know, I don't know how popular an answer this is, but people ask, "Oh, what are your favorite Marvel movies. It's like, yeah, Logan. Yep, Logan's up there. Blade. I mean,
Okay. One
you
of the things we debate about all the time on the
right.
podcast on the regular feed. What's your feelings on Blade 3?
Fuck it. I love it.
Oh my
Love it.
gosh. Oh
I listen,
no.
the guy who played Dracula, pun not intended, sucks. Like he was not good.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you asked 13-year-old me if he ever would get to see Wolverine on the big screen getting launched off of a motorcycle to attack somebody in a helicopter, I would say, oh, like, I can die after watching that scene. Now, that scene happens to come from not the best Wolverine movie, but you know what? I can still enjoy that scene, right? I can forget about Deadpool
Oh
without
yeah.
the mouth at the end. I can enjoy the parts and find joy in some of those parts of that movie of just hearing Wolverine say bub
Yeah.
on screen. Like I can still enjoy that. So there are absolutely parts of that movie that enjoy. First of all, I can just look at Jessica Biel's shoulders all day long in that movie. And you know, I I'm an archer. I've got bows. I've been shooting since I was a kid, so I kind of always liked the archers, whether it was Kate Bishop or Hawkeye.
Yeah.
But I thought I loved her in that movie. And it was Parker Posey was amazing in that movie. She is so good. So yeah, even though that movie is as a whole not a great movie, I can still look at some of those scenes and get a lot of enjoyment. Wesley Snipes is, I mean, we just learned that right
Oh
earlier this
yes,
summer.
Wesley Snipes.
He's the man.
Yes.
So, I am, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to do Blood Hunt as an actual play
Which
because
is interesting. When you dropped that video and for that campaign, I was like, wait a minute, there's an actual Blood Hut comic book out. And
right now,
then
yeah.
I was like, wow, you actually connected, which actually leads me into my next question, because this is something that I've been thinking about doing. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to actually pull it off. But what are some of your kind of comic book storylines that we have in real life that you would love to do a campaign of? So for me, one of my
Ooh,
favorite stories of all time, I love the Marvels. Kurt Busiek and can I believe I'm blanking on his name? Uh
the
he did
artist
yeah,
Ross.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I love that story so
yeah.
much. And it's like such a simple story. So I was like, I've been trying to think of like how should I introduce kind of a campaign to that? So do you have any storylines that you would love to do?
So I I really I really like the idea of doing something that's current. I mean, not that I wouldn't have fun doing like a Days of Future Past, like set in the future, dystopian, everyone's
Yeah.
dead. There's only a few, mutants left. Like I could have a lot of fun with that story. But I really like the idea of doing something that's current and trying to fit it in. So for me, and I'm doing this at home, it's it's what happens after, and it starts with like a question. It starts with like a cliffhanger. So at the end of X-Men 97, the cartoon, we know that the world thinks the X-Men are dead. Forge is pretty sure they're alive because he's trying to figure out some way to save Aurora and kind of get everyone back. But we know that 6 months have passed, and we see Forge's little cork board on the wall with all of these mutants, some of them with X's in them, presumed dead, and then other one. And like it's that question, like, what is he doing? You see Shadowcat on there, Dust is on there.
I
And
see what you're
then
doing now. You're going to build out
yeah,
the story of like what did happen in your
right.
version of it.
And then there's something about like I like restrictions. So I for a starting point, it's like, let's start with only those mutants that are on the board and the other mutants that we know for sure survived Genosha,
Hmm.
right? So we saw Puck, not well, Puck's not a mutant, but we saw Puck anyway.
Right.
We saw a strong guy. Like we saw a couple of these
Exodus and
mutants
all of
that
those
we,
guys.
yeah. Well, Exodus, I don't think we saw Exodus
Oh yeah, when
after.
it's him after, we don't know what happened
Yeah.
to him, which is
Oh,
crazy to think. Sidebar, because I was
come
like,
on.
wait a minute, this is Exodus. There's no way he would have just like passed away like everybody. I was like, come on, man, you gotta put some respect on his name.
Yeah, I don't care how big the Sentinel is. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's not going down.
I
Yeah.
saw that, and I was like, come on, guys. I was like, come on. But I was like, all
Yeah.
right, I'll
Well,
let you do it.
actually, wait a minute. No, I apologize. I think he might have been on the cork board as well. I'm
Was
not
he?
100% sure.
I would say I haven't seen it since the
Yeah.
last aired. So
Yeah. So Polaris, we saw Polaris for a little bit. So it's like, all right, let's just restrict ourselves to this group of characters. Psylocke, I guess it was Quanin,
yeah,
that we saw. Um, and I think we might have also seen Aurora, although I don't think we saw her brother, North Star. And so, all right, so what's that story like? Right? We got all of the big names, like, you know, you lost a goddess, right?
right,
In Storm, you lost the leader in Cyclops, you lost Magneto and Professor X. Like, you lost all of the big guns, and you've got this guy, Forge, who's kind of assuming a leadership position. But then what do we know about Forge in the cartoon? Well, we know that he's got ties to the government. We know that he's got ties to X Factor, right?
right,
Because we've seen those pictures. So
right.
are Jubilee and Sunspot really gonna stick around to hang out with the government funded guy? At I don't think that's in their characters to do that, to be that, like that kind of team. So in my mind, and then we also on the board saw that Jubilee and Sunspot were listed as AWOL, which is such like a military thing to
Right.
say. They just had enough of you, man. Like they
They
want
literally
to
went
go,
through a
like
whole
they're
bunch of stuff.
18 years old and you're putting them on this like mission and stuff. It's like let them live a little. AWOL. Um, so yeah, so it's like I find a lot of interest in that. Like, what would that story be? And then you start thinking, well, what would it be like? Out of those characters we mentioned, Shadowcat was on the board. She more likely to go with Jubilee and Sunspot, or is she more likely to go with Forge? Like, which way does she lean? If Puck came back, if Quantum came back, if all these other characters kind of made their way back, what would they do?
That is, oh, I didn't even think about trying to do that with a storyline. That is really good. I'm definitely going to have to go back to some of my favorite storylines. Like, okay, what happens after it ended? What should we do then?
Yeah. And the great thing is, like, we know that season two is coming out, but it's like at least a year away. So you can
Right.
play a campaign like that for a year, and then you have some fun. Like, how close were we? Like,
Yeah.
did we get it? Like,
And
were we
could you
close at
imagine
all?
also if you see one of the characters that you chose to play with during your campaign, they show up in season two, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, look, there he is.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. So yeah, so stuff like that I really like. Um, I also like the lesser known characters. So right now I think about, and I've sort of beginning to incorporate this into the Blood Hunt, and it might be like an offshoot of the next actual play that I do. But I think about, all right, the Krakoan age is over. We've got a bunch of new teams that have started up. So we know that Phoenix is off in space doing stuff. Last issue, she, you know, doing something with Corsair. So she's having space adventures, so she's off the board. You've got all of these other teams, right? Cyclops is leading a team. You got Magneto, who's in a floating chair for some reason. We don't know why yet. Uh, Emma's got her own team. We've got other young mutants that are getting a spotlight. So you've got uh Temper, uh she was formerly Oyo. So you got all, you got all of these characters that the writers are clearly putting their spotlight on.
Right.
So then you start thinking, well, what about all of the other characters? And so for me, it's, one of the questions I had was, all right, well, if Emma's out west, so I forgot where she was, but she's, not in Massachusetts where she used to be based out of, right? Where she had the academy.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on there? What about all of the Hellions that are still out there? Now, some of them have popped up in some of those new comics, but a lot of them haven't.
Yeah, so they got some obscure ones that were in the Hellions comics. Like some of
Yeah.
them I was like I had never even heard of. Like I think it was like the egg person that looked like an egg. I was like, I cannot remember.
Nanny.
Yeah, I was like, I
Yeah,
didn't
Nanny
even
and
know
Orphan
who.
Maker.
Yeah, I didn't. I knew who Orphan Maker was. I actually have
Yeah.
a Marvel chess set next to me, and he's actually one of the pieces that I have,
Oh,
which is crazy.
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
That's
yeah,
a random one.
it is really is. But yeah, I was like, I had no idea who Nanny was. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
So then I had to go and kind of do a little deep dive on who that was. But
Yeah.
yeah, that
And even the
Hellions
older
group.
school ones, like going back to the New Mutant days, and they're still around, like Roulette, Taro, uh, Beef. It was like
Yeah,
Cat's Eye. So you've got all of these characters that I've been reading about for a while that I just feel like, man, somebody just discarded them. Um, so let me play with them. Let me pick them out of the trash heap and let me tell their story, And
yeah,
because then if you take that approach and you like you're not going to have any conflict. Not that it matters. You could always say, well, it's the multiverse, so it's a completely different thing. But I like using the current continuity as inspiration. And I like the idea of trying to fit it in there somehow. So I feel like if I go with these lesser known characters, I won't have those types of conflicts. So yeah, I'm starting to toy with the idea of what's going on in Massachusetts now that Emma isn't there
okay.
anymore.
Now you got my wheelbox thinking. I really enjoy the first Civil War, and now I'm like, maybe I should grab some lesser known characters and let's see what side they would have been.
Oh,
Oh,
so I'll tell you about another the first campaign that I did was set right after Civil War when the Avengers initiative was going on, the 50 state,
the 50 State Initiative.
yeah,
Yeah,
initiative. And this was right after the Getting Schooled rules came out. So this is back in February when I started. And I started the campaign just because I wanted to play test those rules and get some actual feedback to Marvel on those because there was a limited amount of time that you had. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw this together. We're going to start at rank one and we're going to kind of incrementally go up and we're going to tell them what our experiences are. So we started at rank one and the NP. So basically, I said we're going to have like four teams, and the PCs were going to be one team. And then I had other teams, and all of them were like these lesser known characters from the comics. I mean, I had Star Sign was one, Telemetry. Like you might have to Google some of
yeah.
these
I
if
would
you're
say yeah.
listening.
I don't even recognize those
Yeah,
two
Star
names.
Sign's power, she could read people's auras. I'm like,
Oh wow.
awesome, she's in. All right. And I had scenes where she was like, making people make vigilance checks. I'm like, they're like, why? I'm like, oh no, as you just noticed, the entire room smells like sage. Somebody has been, spreading sage, burnt sage around the whole room. It's a star sign. It was like these stupid little moments that made some of these characters memorable. And I had a couple that are gotten a little more play, like Komodo I had in
I
there.
do
And then
recognize that name. Okay.
yeah, she was the one um, who worked with Kirk Connors,
Yeah.
was Kirk Connors' lab, and she didn't have any legs. And she stole the same serum he had to become the lizard. He thought it was perfected, whatever, tried to work on it herself. and she became Komodo. Although she did have more control when she goes back to her human form, she doesn't have legs, so she likes staying in the lizard form because she's got mobility. I'm like, that's a cool character concept. And then the other thing that I did is I threw in characters that were kind of central to some of the comics, like MVP.
Hmm.
So if you're familiar with some of those comics, MVP dies in a way, and then he gets brought back, and he gets cloned, and it's like this whole he's like central to this whole concept of the Avengers Initiative falling apart, which eventually leads to Tony Stark losing control of Shield. He was in control of Shield at the time, and Norman Osborn coming in. So I had all of these elements in place. And if the PCs, if the heroes weren't there, things were gonna play out in the same way. But the heroes are there. So now it's like a big what if episode.
Yeah.
And I get to think out after each game, how are the actions of the heroes going to change the events that happened in the comics? And one, it's great because anyone who knows about the comics might be expecting MVP to die one session. But when he doesn't, and when it's somebody else or nobody, then they start thinking, oh, wait a minute, like we can actually change what happens here. And then so the other thing that happened was the Skrull invasion happened right at the same time.
Right.
And I also played around with who the Skrulls were. I might have
Oh
changed a couple of
man,
them.
that I
So
know
I
that
was
was good.
so I was screwing with people. I mean, everyone. So people are, if they read it, maybe they were like, I don't trust that Hank Pym guy. He seems a
Right.
little weird. I'm like, no, he's just weird because he's the kind of guy that slaps his wife when he shouldn't. Um, so yeah, so it was just a fun opportunity to like again play with these lesser known characters that I really enjoyed playing with. And and even the characters we had, like we got a chance to play somebody played like an alternate version of Kitty Pride that like it's a whole what if scenario in my
So
mind.
it's the what if Kitty Pryde was a pirate captain like she was.
So this was if you remember the famous Professor Xavier is a jerk. It wasn't a
Yes.
cover; it was the first page of an issue. That really famous art splash page. And the whole point of that was Professor X finally said, "Hey, maybe it's not a good idea to put a 13-year-old like in front of like guns and like treat her like she's a soldier." And then throughout that episode, and then she was like, "No, no, I want to be on the front lines as a young teenager," which didn't make any sense at all. It's like, no,
Right.
like, so in my mind, it's like, no, Charles Xavier wasn't a jerk. He was actually being responsible for once in his miserable life. So this alternate version of Kitty Pryde didn't get a chance to be in the X-Men to go on those adventures. Professor X said, we're not, I'll train you, I'll teach you, but we're not putting you in harm's way. So she was still rank one at the time she turns 18. And then when she's 18 and she graduates, and Charles Xavier is like, hey, do you want to join the X-Men? She's like, nah, I'm going to sign up for some real training. I'm going to sign up with the 50 state initiative. So
Nice.
that was just a kind of a cool what if scenario. And then I had my buddy Fish, who's in the actual play, was playing Doorman from the West Coast.
I was about to say
Sorry,
I
sorry,
would say
sorry.
that's another
Great
name I don't.
Lakes,
The
the
Great Lakes
Great Lakes
Avengers.
Avengers. Yeah. And he's such a badass character, but the Great Lakes Avengers was a bit of
Is
a
that the
joke book.
team with she was the really
Big
big
Bertha.
yeah, Big Bertha. Okay.
Yeah,
That's the team with her, right?
that's the team. Yep. And
Okay,
it's just a
okay.
funny team. Um, play for laughs, but like we just played him as a more serious character. Like, what if was like, what if he's like, because he's got some cool he's tied to the Dark Force dimension, so he's got like some really cool powers going on. Um, but what if we didn't play him for a joke?
Yeah. So in some of your games, do you prefer players to have their own creative character, or do you like let them choose like a pre-made kind of character, even homebrew characters as well? Because I think
Yeah,
at this point, I think when I first started the game, I was like, okay, everybody make creative characters. I don't want to see like any pre-made characters. I don't want to see anybody. But now I'm more like, I think it might be a little fun if people play with some of the pre-made characters, even if they are homebrew. What's your thoughts on that?
it's a good question. I mean, I did a little bit of a survey on this, and I think people it's pretty 50-50. It's almost split down the middle in terms of what people prefer.
Hmm.
So I'm the same way. I don't have a preference. It's like whatever you want to play. Like, the only thing I would say is that if you want to play an established character, but the thing that's keeping you back is that, well, I haven't read every comic book they've been in, or maybe I'm a little intimidated, or I didn't see the latest movie, or I don't know. Do I want to play the Werewolf by Night Disney Plus version of Elsa
Hmm.
Bloodstone, or do I want to play, um, the comic book version, or do I want to play her original version where she was like blonde and more of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer
Right.
type, and she never cursed, which is like, who is this person? Um, my advice to them is like, this is your character. This is like, what if you were the writer of the comic book and anything you did was therefore canon? So you don't have to worry about what came before. You were writing the character. You can retcon anything you want. You can make anything up. You can put this is another universe. You can ignore what you want to ignore. You can do anything you want with the character. So, that's what I try to tell people. And I think Cullen Bunn at the beginning of the Deadpool adventure just wrote it so perfectly. Um, to just unclench was the word that he used. Just like, don't worry, just have fun. Pick whatever version of the character you like. And for something you don't like about it, change it. This is your character.
Okay. I want to ask you a controversial question just because
Oh, good.
I was like
Tired of your softballs, Jordan.
I know when it happened to me, I was like, oh, I didn't know people felt this way about it. So I mean, I work in the tech industry, so
Hmm.
I understand that AI is a big thing that's going on right now.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the AI images created for created characters? Because, like I said, for me, whenever I was creating characters,
Yeah.
I wanted my players to kind of get a visual of what I was thinking about for a character. One of the ones was for Jungle Spider. I know
Mhm.
created an AI image for that one, and I posted it in
Mm.
the group, and people were not happy about that. And I was like, I thought it was such an innocent thing. I was like, this is what I want my players to see
Yeah.
what this character looks like. And but yeah, some people were not happy about that. But I understand
Yeah.
it. I understand it.
I mean, I've been in tech too my whole life. I started my career as a sysadmin, and
Okay.
I've been involved in software development, uh, of some kind or another, my whole life. And so long as you're not selling it, I don't I don't see where the problem is.
Yeah. That
Um,
that's that's how I felt too. It's like I'm not trying to be malicious with it, but for me, I'm very visual and I wanted my players to understand, okay, this is what this jungle version of Spider would look like, or this is what my created
yeah.
character. Like I created a I don't like saying Nick Fury. I like to call myself Jay Fury whenever I
Oh,
I
I
enjoy
noticed
using
that. I
that.
noticed that in the latest episode of Kang. I went back and like, did he say Jay Fury?
Yeah, because I didn't want to keep saying Nick Fury, so I was like, you know what, I'm not just gonna be Jay Fury, Jordan Fury. So I created an AI image of what I thought this Nick Fury with this Jay Fury look like. He's a cool, smooth brother. He
Yeah.
got both eyes, and so I was like, this is who I am. So I was like, yeah, I was creating some AI images for that, and I just like to have a visual for people to understand what I'm trying to convey.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I'll tell you this: when I, even though I wasn't selling it, when I put together my Marvel uh Multiverse adventure, the X-Men 97 one, I made sure I didn't put any AI in
Yeah.
there. And even the maps, I just made I mean, the maps are trash looking because I made them myself and I am no cartographer, but I'm like, I'd rather like put that stuff in there myself.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I'll say this about using actual Marvel art. Um, and this might be controversial. I don't know. I was like, I use in my videos, I use plenty of art from the books,
Hmm.
right? And I think from a legal perspective, it's there's no question that I'm covered because I'm analyzing the work that I'm showing the work. I mean, in a way, it's free advertisement. Um, I don't personally have an issue using that art. And the other thing is like that art, while it was made by somebody, it was made for Marvel. Like
Yeah.
the artists don't own that art. Like if they were working for Marvel when they drew a picture of Nick Fury, that's not their art. Just like the words on the page aren't owned by the writer when you work for a company or
Right.
you have a contract with that company. So, I think sometimes people have this correct urge to protect artists. And I
Right.
think many of the arguments that you hear that are anti AI art are to protect the people who are out there producing their own art and selling their own art
Yeah. Now, yeah.
versus this artist. Listen, I love Marvel, but is anyone going to cry if I used a Marvel? I mean, again, I'm not even using it to sell anything. It's like I'm I'm relatively sure Marvel is okay. I've gotten plenty of emails from them saying they love the videos, keep doing it. Um, so I'm relatively sure Marvel is okay with what I'm doing. So therefore I'm okay. So I don't know if anyone's ever gotten upset with like me showing. It's like, no, I've done my due diligence. Like I know it's cool. Like from
Yeah.
every aspect.
And I
I
was
know
like
what
you
I'm
said,
doing is cool.
you are advertising for them. Like you are helping them out. You are pushing the game. You are growing the game.
Yeah. And even if I was being uh I don't know, like if even if I was trolling them, there are I mean there are differences. Like obviously in gaming right now. And I even put this kind of disclaimer up there because it was such a hot topic in D&D right now, where like what you can't do, and I'm very careful, and I'm working right now, I'm working on a video for the powers that were in the X-Men book. Right. So one thing I make sure I don't do is I'm not going to just show every power in the book. I'm
Yeah.
going to highlight, like I think I highlight one power from like the luck section, one power from the
To not show
healing.
off everything.
Yeah, and I'll put the one up there, but I'm not going to show you the entire book. I mean, like obviously, I want people to buy the
Right.
book
So
because
you
the
just
more
show
people
the
that buy,
one. Yeah, you show them the
yeah,
one and they want to see the rest of it. So they go
yeah,
out and go get the book for themselves.
yeah, and that's the very definition of fair use. But I think what got some people in trouble is they would have an out for the D&D videos is they would have an hour-long video where they literally had the book out and were paging from page to
Mm,
page. It's like you might as well be scanning that.
right.
Like it's like so it's like I think whether it's AI or whether it's something like that. And I used to work in publishing on the IT side, but I worked for a publishing company, largest at the time, largest publishing company in the world for 17 years. Uh, Surrounded by books, right? I would get 70% off, and it was Penguin at the time.
Yeah.
So 70% off, and we had even back then we had some Marvel books. So I was like,
Yeah. I was like, I would have been in there. I need
I
that
had
new book.
all the books,
Yeah.
all the books. Um, and if people plagiarized books like that, that would have hit me right in the pocketbook.
Yeah.
So, So I was one of those people that would have been affected by plagiarism, and you know, I'm sensitive to why Marvel might not want to do the PDF thing, or is at least
Right.
slow to I get it.
Yeah, I get
As
it too.
as I know firsthand, maybe my bonus wasn't what it could have been one year if once PDF started getting more popular. It was a big issue for publishing. What people don't realize is the margins in publishing are nothing. They are so slim. Um, Anything goes wrong in your year, and it could make or break your year.
Yeah.
And even when you have, we would when Oprah would announce her book club book,
Oh,
right?
you
We
guys knew you had to get ready for
Oh,
whatever
it
that
was
book
like
she
all
mentioned.
of these secret, like no one was allowed to know what it was. So we had these secret code names for it and stuff, but we had to make sure everything was in stock and the orders, everyone from customer service was on edge that I was responsible for all of the order processing system. So did the order come in yet? Did the order come in yet? It was crazy. Um, and even though we might have had a couple of those books, it still would have, you know, if but we didn't have like a Twilight. I had a friend of mine worked for the publishing company where they had Twilight. Twilight comes out, that made their entire year.
That was a massive book, especially
Right.
when and then the resurgence with the movie too.
Right. But if everyone was able to get that book pirated for free, if it was super
It'd
easy
have
to
been
do
over
that,
with.
friends of mine lose their jobs. So,
Right. Which is kind of the
so
same thing with the music industry as well. It's like when people were burning CDs, like that would directly hurt people.
yeah, and I've never I've I've had the same albums that I've purchased on cassette, CD,
Yeah.
digital, and then listen to it on the service that I pay for now. So I've paid for the same music like
Oh,
four times.
it's funny. Like we were talking comics right before we started, and like I've double dipped so many times. I have the single issues, I have the graphic novels, and then I have the digital versions. Like, yeah, I double and triple dip
Yeah.
all the time.
And I don't mind at all. Same thing with like say, some people and I can totally understand this because there isn't a PDF option. So people think of either Roll20 or Demiplane as the digital option.
Yes.
It's obviously it's more than that, right? Part of using Demiplane, right? You got software people you gotta you gotta
Yeah.
pay. There are people who are building software not just to print a PDF or to put some text up on a screen, but to integrate it with all of the other books in a way that PDFs don't do, to
Yes.
have
Which
the
I really enjoy,
character
by the way.
creation software.
Oh man, when I first got introduced to the game, I bought the book and then I was like, okay, how do I play? And then it mentioned Demiplane. And so I was like, okay, I never heard of it before then. So I went to check it out and I
Same.
was like, wow, this is actually really good. And it makes me more excited that now that Roll20, did Roll20 buy Demiplane or Demiplane bought Roll20? I
Roll
think
20
Roll20
bought
bought Demi,
Demiplane. Yeah.
which makes me super excited for when they start integrating that technology into Roll20 because I'm like, oh man, Demiplane did a great job. I was like, only thing they're missing is an app. I was like, give me an app for character creation and oh, I'm in love.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are so many things they can do to kick it up even to a higher level. But what they've got is astonishingly good. I mean, it's an
Yes.
it's an it's an A plus product. And I
Yes.
don't so if I'm getting an A plus product, which I feel like I'm getting in Demiplane, I don't mind. And I'll tell people, listen, I've gotten free copies from Demiplane for review purposes. Guess what? I still buy them because I can't share a review copy that I get. So even though I've got it for free, I still buy it because I want to be able to share it with my gaming
And when
group.
you feel like it's worth it, you do it.
I do it happily, even if I have to save up for it. Even like currently right now, like we're trying to we haven't done it with the X-Men book yet, but it's like we're trying to figure out, all right, if we all kick in $10, are you guys comfortable with that? If I buy it and then I share it to you, but then we all kick in $10 instead of me just dropping 50 on it or everyone having to spend whatever
Hmm.
amount on it so they have it themselves and they quote own it. But yeah, I mean, I do not mind paying extra for that because you're buying a product. Like you're buying, and it's not just a character tool. It's like, oh God, like the way they implemented the getting school rules
Yes.
in Demiplane. I mean,
Yes.
think about this. People talk about, like game balance and I wish I could this one character build. I wish I could just give him one or two extra powers and it would really make the build perfect. Okay. So why don't you make this character rank 3 with 2 points towards rank 4? So he's got those two extra powers that
Yeah.
you wanted him to have. Like this changes the way you play the game. It's not just 6 ranks anymore. It's like 56 ranks or whatever it is. It's so it just it just makes you want to sit in front of that app and just make characters all
Oh,
day long.
and I have been. It's so funny. It's like I mentioned earlier. It's like for me. I mean, I'm black, so there are things when I was growing up. It's like, oh, that's not cool, bro. You can't be doing that.
Mm,
And so creating characters was always something I was interested in. And I'm telling you, once I found this game, and then once I found Demi playing, oh, I've been creating characters left and right. Like my most recent character I just created, I wanted a Hydra agent who can do more ESP stuff.
mm.
I wanted to be able to attack more logic. So I just created characters like she had experiments done on her. And so now she has telekinesis and telepathy and like so she has some of those other ESP powers. And I was like, man, creating characters is just such a fun thing to do.
And did you say they were an AIM agent or
Hydra.
a Hydra agent? Okay. Because
Yes.
Van from the Blood Hunt game played an AIM agent that had the same thing. He was like, uh, AIM got a hold of somebody with some latent powers and kind of, put him through the program. And then
Yes.
later he escaped and joined up with the initiative.
Hmm.
And that was a really, really fun. Yeah, and he had like the ESP powers. And of course, AIM was using him for no good,
Yeah.
but now he's out, he's a little free.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I wanted some more Hydra characters who just, they're grunts, but I wanted them to
yeah,
not just have just traditional just guns. Like I wanted to give them a little extra bump.
yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, when you mentioned, so just prior to that, you mentioned, uh, being black, like how does that, like, is it just because you didn't see the
So
representation necessarily when you
so
see a
yeah,
bunch of Hydra
it's
goons?
it's one of those things. It's like, and we talked about this kind of on the regular podcast, but like sometimes in the black community, you do nerdy things,
Mm,
and they're just not cool. So like for me, it's like, which is terrible to say now, but it's like when I was younger, I used to be. I mean, I still am. I was a super nerd, but it's like
yeah,
when I saw other people do nerdy things, I'd be like, oh, look at those nerds over there.
yeah,
Secretly in the back of my mind, I was like, I know everything they have. Those Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I know all those Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I
yeah.
know all the Pokemon cards. But it's just like I couldn't show that. But it wasn't until really like the MCU started popping. Like my best friend in college, he'd always be like, we're playing basketball. I'm a big athlete, and he would be like, we'll be talking trash. He would, you better shut up before I tell everybody you got all those comics in your room. I'm like, and I'm like, whoa, 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 calm down. Let's not do all that. Let's calm down. But I really feel like the MCU was the thing that kind of opened up the world for nerds. And so I was like, so
Yeah,
now I feel like I'll say whatever I want now. So like it's more acceptable now. So when I was like, I was telling people, yeah, I'm about to play this D&D game. It's not D&D, but it's a Marvel version of D&D. And they was like, what? And I was like, yeah. I was like, do you want to join? And I was like, it is Marvel. And they was like, I mean, I'll give it a try. And so that's how I was able to get a couple of guys, at work to join in with
yeah.
me. So
Well,
yeah, it's just one of those things.
this is just an observation, but obviously I follow a lot of comic book related creators on YouTube, and so many of them. are black dudes that just really love the comics. So Blurred Without Fear was one of the
Yes.
first that I started following. Um, SEM Comics is another one. Like these are like relatively small groups, but the ones that I just enjoyed the most, uh, Dope Spill is another one, and there's a fourth one. I'm just blanking on the name, but all four of them are black guys, and yeah, it just so happened, it's not like I'm searching black creators for comic
Yeah.
books. Um, it just so happened that these four in a row that I subscribe to, and I don't subscribe to like a lot of things, 'cause I just can't handle my feed. But yeah, I just thought that was like really just noteworthy because like it just so happened that one, I like the fact that um I like the fact that all of them seem to be critical, especially when and critical to me is not a negative word, but um just say what they see when they're reading a
Yeah.
comic, right? And if it's like, hey, that's an awfully white looking, you know, cover you've got there with like five white dudes on it. It's like, I get sick of that.
Yeah.
I, you know, I am conscious of the fact that sometimes when I'm at a gaming table, it's like, oh, it's me and a bunch of other middle-aged straight white guys. It's like, this is boring.
And it's funny, it actually goes both ways. One of the things that we talk about, because the podcast came along, we're three black guys and like
Mm,
we all into nerd stuff.
mm,
So that was the kind of thing that tied us together, but it works both ways. And when it comes to like diversity and movies and stuff, we're just like one of the things I really hate was when they made Johnny Storm black. I'm like, no, 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 no. Let's keep Johnny Storm the way he was. It's like Michael B. Jordan, good actor. I don't need
right.
you playing Johnny Storm. So it's like sometimes, and they were talking about doing the Black Superman movie, and I was like, no, that's not what we want. We want you to create a new character. We don't
Yes,
want you to change an existing one. I was like, because that's
absolutely.
hurting it.
Yeah, and or pay attention to the many great black characters that are out there that you could be making movies about, but you choose not to. Like, why are you still making movies about Fantastic Four? Just like you've tried that so many times already and failed miserably. Just give it up
Yes,
and, like, let's see another Black Panther movie,
yes,
right? Just or let's have more characters like a Blade, like Nick Fury. Yes, let's highlight some of the, and not just like one of my one of my favorite of the What If episodes um was I mean I love all of them. Um
some of those were a little rough. I'm gonna be honest with you. Some of those were a
oh,
little
which
rough.
ones didn't you like?
I didn't, for me personally, I didn't
Wait,
like
second season or first? Because first was
first.
a little, yeah, first was a little
Yeah,
dodgier.
first.
Yeah.
I didn't like the Peter, was that the Peter Quill? No, that was second season. Uh
Oh, when he comes back as a kid
yes, I didn't really like
with
that was
all of
second
the,
season. Yeah,
yeah,
that was yeah. First season, I'm trying to think first, which one did I not? I didn't, I mean the T'Challa one, Star-Lord, that was fine to me.
yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fine to me. And I'm really trying to think about that first season. Because I really enjoyed the Marvel Zombies ones. I enjoyed the Doctor Strange one a lot. I think that was my top
Yeah.
two for sure.
But the second season, the Kahori episode,
Oh yeah, that was good. That was
and
good.
that's what I'm like, give me, that's what I want to see.
That's perfect example. Yes.
I want to be able to like watch a show and then watch the making of the day later and realize that they brought people on set to make sure they got the culture right, they got the language right, they got the representation right, from the beginning. Even little, and Marvel has gotten so good at this, like with Moon Knight, right? Moon Knight as a Jewish character. They had a rabbi on set to make sure they got the scenes where like there was one scene where there was, I think, a Seder, to make sure they got that right. So Marvel is getting really good at making sure that when they bring characters that have an important part of their background, uh, to make sure that they nail it. And
Yes.
I love that. And obviously, like you saw that. with with Black Panther, both of them. I mean, just like it's so fun because it's so different. Like I want different, right?
Yes.
Morph in the animated. Yes, give me more characters that aren't like me. Like I don't give me characters with different pronouns. Give me characters. Like I want to see my biggest wish for the next phase is I need a married Mystique and Destiny done right.
Oh yeah.
You know, kudos to Chris Claremont, who pushed as hard as he could way back in the day when the comics code would not allow him to have to actually call them a lesbian couple or
Right.
say that. And there's interviews where he said he wanted to do that. But I remember as a kid reading those comics in the early 80s and seeing like there's Mystique in a bathrobe, and there's Destiny sitting at the table drinking coffee. Mystique's coming downstairs. They're both wearing bathrobes. I'm like, are these chicks living together? I'm like,
You start
that's
to put
pretty
it
cool.
together. Yeah, you start
You
to
know,
put
like
it
even as a
together.
kid, you're like, oh, that's accepted. That's cool. You know, but you know, I was lucky in that I grew up in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
So I had, you know, all of my mom's friends uh were black women. So I was lucky enough to grow up in a place where, especially in my early youth, where that was normal. You
Yeah.
know, it was, of course, but recognize that a lot of people aren't born in New York City, right? And that's why Marvel is so great, right? Because you've got, it was written by, all these stories written by a Jewish guy, right? So he can bring some of that,
It was a mixed pot of everything.
yeah, and just living in, Stan Lee living in the city and being surrounded by all that uniqueness.
Uh,
Um,
I,
I
I
love
want
I love it.
I want to say one thing because you mentioned Moon Knight. So outside of all the X-Men characters, Moon Knight is actually my favorite character. And man, I tell you what, I was very disappointed by the Moon Knight show. I it was not the Moon Knight that I wanted. I wanted more kind of butt kicking. I wanted more of like fighting in the streets. Like the supernatural approach, it was like I wasn't huge on that. Like I wanted to see a Daredevil, like Netflix Daredevil style Moon
Yeah,
Knight. That's what I thought it was. And then they kind of changed the personalities as well. And I was like, I wasn't a big fan of the way they handled that.
yeah.
But I was how I would told you I was so disappointed in it overall.
I I mean I can see that because like Moon Knight, like there's so many different Moon Knights
Yes.
as time went on, right? Um, but a lot of his stories have got like I like the Khonshu stuff.
Hmm.
And I even love how they've kind of gone back and made Khonshu a more important figure. Like even in Blood Hunt,
Yeah.
there were some stories where it's like Khonshu and then the other, like I guess some people don't think of like Egypt, obviously part of Africa. So Egypt, the Egyptian deities and the other quote African, whether it's Bast or the other deities, do have a relationship, even though, Egypt is thought to be a little, whatever, other separated from them.
Yeah.
But it was cool seeing them interact. I mean, I love
Which I thought
mythology.
I can't remember the episode where they went to like the plains. I legit thought we were going to see Boss there for a minute because they
Oh
talk about
yeah.
how would they go to ancestral place, and then Black Panther they said the same thing. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, we're about to get this connection. So I
Yeah.
was like, and then they didn't do it. I was like,
I know.
ah,
I was hoping for that too. But I mean, yeah, I love Moon Knight. I would love to see like in this is season two. I want to see Moon Knight and the Midnight Mission.
oh, dude, this comic book run of Moon Knight. Oh, I absolutely love this newest run that they've
Did
been
you
going through.
did you
I am,
read the one where
yes, I am completely caught up on all of it.
I
Yes,
literally today with my youngest, who's 8, showed her the scene of Moon Knight and Tigra running towards each other, the way they drew that, and then
yes,
hugging and kissing. I was like, I was
Yes.
showing her that, like practically tearing up, but I'm like, I love the two of them together. I I just love the two of them together. I mean, I
Yes.
like they are probably my favorite Marvel
I agree. And it came
couple, which
for
is a
me, it
weird
came
thing.
out of nowhere. Like it came like even though in the comic like they say they had previous history, but for me, it's like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I was like, what is Tigra doing here? And then they talk about and they just built this relationship. And I'm just like, and then all the other characters, Reese and just all the other characters kind of coming in. I'm like, oh wow,
Reese is
this is really
great.
good.
Soldier is great. Even
Yes.
Eight Ball, like
A
it was
random
such.
character.
I love the scene where Moon Knight comes back and Eight Ball starts freaking out.
Yes.
And he's like, I've been good. I've been good. I've been good. Because he just sees Moon Knight. And like anyone, you see like this guy coming at you, you're scared. And he's freaking out. But then Moon Knight just kind of says, I think he just says, gets right up in his face, like he's going to kill him. And then he just says, good job or something like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like what a great story. And you know, like that comic book represents what I love a lot about MMRPG. Like I would play a Moon Knight mission game.
Oh
I
yes.
wanted to.
I need a
Like
Hunter's Moon. I need a Hunter's Moon homebrew character because I would
totally.
love to go on a two-man hunt, Moon
I'll
Knight and
uh,
Hunter's Moon.
I'll be Reese, you be Hunter's Moon. We'll get somebody to play Soldier. I love it. And I love just all those characters have got like these funny little things about them. Like I find it hilarious that Reese used to be a vegan.
I know.
It's just little things. It's just so memorable. And I love the fact that the writers, and this is a sign of a good writer, right? Like they just those could have been thrown away characters, right? Those characters could have been killed off 5 years ago,
Yes.
but they like the writers just will these little characters into significant personalities in not only in Moon Knight's life, but they carried the torch for
Yeah.
Moon Knight for how long was he dead? Like,
Almost a year, I want to say. Like
yeah,
if not
which
more, yeah.
right? That's pretty good for Marvel, right? Sometimes they pop back in like three
Oh, I
issues or
know.
something.
I know. Uh okay. I have one more question before I let you
Okay.
go. So, like we talked in the beginning, I love your YouTube channel. What is next? Kind of what are some goals for your YouTube channel?
Oh, geez, that's a good question. I'll tell you what my goals were early on. Um, and I have a friend of mine that I was talking to about this, and I was asking him for some advice, and he's one of these guys that can keep me honest. I really value his opinion because he'll tell me like,
Which we all
nope,
need someone like that.
yeah, yeah, and I just really appreciate him. He's a really good friend. Um, and and talking to him really helped me get my mind kind of squared away. And at the time I was thinking, well, you know, should I do like a Pathfinder one? And in some way I was thinking about it like in terms of like I haven't made like I just got monetized. Like I haven't gotten any money from this at all yet. Like so like this is like a an expenditure for me at this point between,
Yeah.
you know, paying for, you know, the Zoom and getting a new mic and like my
Oh yeah,
laptop could
I get that.
it takes me
I bought a whole new computer set because my laptop was going down. I was like, for the podcast, I was like, I needed something.
dude, last night um I it took me 2.5 hours to just to render the last episode of Blood Hunt, and then there was a error. And I just checked, and there was a problem with it. Oh, something there was some piece of music in it that I had used that was supposed to be royalty free, and uh, YouTube flagged it. I'm like, oh. So I had to go. I had to wipe it out. It took 5 seconds to take the music out, and then 2.5 to 3 hours to render it. And
Oh
that's
my
with me like
goodness.
closing everything on my poor little laptop, you know, like
That
closing everything.
I will say the reason why we do a podcast and we don't do YouTube is because I it cannot do that. Like the amount of time you have to spend for video editing, the rendering. I'm like, I cannot
It's
do it. I was like, audio was easier for us to do.
it is you're probably right, and I'm probably dumb for not following your footsteps, for sure. Um, but anyway, I mean, so early on, I think my goal was like one, just figure. My first goal was just like figure out what the hell you're doing,
Hmm.
um, and do it in a way that, like, for me, felt like me. Like, I'm the kind of person. If I click on if I'm going through YouTube and I see one of these thumbnails that has the stupid shocked look on their
Oh,
face, it's like,
yes.
never recommend this to me again. I'm like, I just feel like I'm being manipulated. I,
Yes.
I, I, and I,
Clickbait.
and I'm sensitive that, like, yeah, that probably works. It definitely works, right? Those people are probably getting way more traffic than I ever will. But whatever, I don't care. So it's like, so my first goal was like, just be you, do it your way, no matter what anyone else says, no matter who cares about the clicks, like, and then, but provide value.
Yes.
Like, I remember watching some videos where somebody just had like a 2 hour long video. They just got the book, they hadn't cracked it. Like, you can hear the binding crack as they're opening the book for the first time. And they're just reading it and they're just babbling their first impressions. And they're getting things wrong. I'm like, no, this is clarified like 3 pages later. Just stop talking and read and then talk.
Yes.
And I never wanted to do anything like that. I always wanted to be helpful. Like, hey guys, if you're reading this, this rule is a little tricky. And, like, one of the criticisms I had, especially in my early videos, was things weren't organized well in those first two books. Like, that's why I was so hyped about the vehicle rules, is because it corrected so many of the criticisms that I had earlier on, where I felt like I had to create a video because the rules are all over the place. And then I'm listening to people doing actual plays and they're getting everything wrong. And it's understandable because the rules weren't laid out maybe as clear as they could be. And listen, all of that's like, it's a first edition. There's page count issues. I mean, it's like all of that's excusable. Doesn't mean like the game's bad. Every
Right.
game has got issues.
It's
Like, there's
always
always,
something.
yeah, there's always crunch time, and something has to give, and you're being asked to pull things out late. And uh, so, like, I'm sensitive to that, but I felt like that's what I could provide as as an aid to support people who want to learn the game, but maybe uh, can't necessarily sit and read through the book. Like, some people have dyslexia, right?
Yeah.
And they literally can't sit and read a book. And I've had people come to me and or just people have different learning styles, and that's something, I'm everyone's got different learning styles, and I know though I create videos in a way that would help me,
They
and
helped. I can tell you for sure they helped.
just those little, like, it's not that I'm a untrusting person, but it's like, trust and verify. Like, okay, it's cool that you said that, but what are your sources?
Yeah.
Like, where did you get this from? Only because I want to, like, that's how I learn, is by not just listening to you and remembering. Because I can't, I have a horrible memory, horrible memory. If you just say something to me, it's not, I have to do it or write it down to have it sink in. So for me, if I find something confusing about the rules, the process of making a video is what helps it sink in. So I love tackling the tough questions because I'm like, all right, now I'll be better prepared if somebody asks me in the future. But yeah, so the early goals, this is typical fuzzy, just babbling on.
Oh, you're good because I when I got the book, I read it, found your YouTube channel, read the book again, watched videos. It's like I kept going back and forth to get the full understanding. And I mean, hell, probably I still don't understand some of the stuff, but I'm able to encounter it in game,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, okay, I will figure out from here.
Yeah. So yeah, so those are the goals early on, is just to create good content that some people would find useful, right? And then after I started getting good feedback and I was like, oh wow, like it looks like there are at least some people that are interested in this and I'm getting decent enough feedback. Then I started thinking about like, all right, well, let me let me think in longer terms of like, I know we've got a couple of books coming out at the end of the summer. So if I could really sort of bust my ass during the spring and into the summer and see if I could get on Marvel's radar. I'm like, I don't know. I'd like to do that by like the end of the year. That would be great. But I was thinking in my mind, like, if I could get to the point where I could do a review for one of those books, and that would be the thing that maybe gets me on Marvel's radar in some way, then that would be like a sign of success. But then, CJ reached out to me, I think back in like, I don't know, like March or something, saying, hey, I've been just want to let you know, I've been watching your videos and I enjoy them. And
Oh,
I
I
was
bet
like,
that was an amazing
oh my
feeling.
God. Oh, I ran around the house. I'm like, I got an email that has Marvel, the Marvel logo written at the bottom. Marvel wrote me. Like it was Stan Lee back from the
Yes.
grave, writing me. Um, but no, it was an amazing feeling. And that really, so kudos to CJ. Thank you if you're listening to this for setting out that first email, because it really was it's just inspiring. Um, and then after that, I don't know, it was just like uh I didn't have like an idea of how many subscribers I wanted or how many views I wanted or anything like that. It was it was just to kind of be a, however small of a role, but be a part of bringing a community together. Because that's like the one thing I wanted the game to have that maybe I didn't feel like it had as much of early on. And yeah, I just I like bringing people together. I like people. I like harmony. I
Yeah.
like good vibes and stuff. And I just wanted to be a part of something positive like that. And that's been like the most rewarding thing for me, is just meeting other geeks that have the same loves as I do. People
Yep.
like yourself, people like, Billy Mickle, I get a chance to talk to, people like CJ, um, some of the folks at Demiplane. Just having an opportunity to talk to people about something geeky that I've loved for my whole life. Um, when, there are growing up, there was no one that could, if there was a Marvel trivia, you know, game or something, it's like, no, no one's in my hometown is beating me. I'm like, no
That's
one's coming close.
I
No
get
one's gonna
that.
want to play, right?
I get that.
So one of the great things about the internet is, right, is you can talk to people,
Yes.
um, and drop a couple of references and they pick it up. I'm like, oh, you know who that person is? What about this person? Ah, you know
I
who
do
that
that in real
person
life
is?
too. I do that. I find out people's hobby and if they say comics, I'm like, oh, okay, what kind of comics? Oh, you're in the Marvel? Okay, who's
Yeah.
some of your what are you doing? You like comics? So I do the same thing. Drop a
I've
couple of
done that
hints.
on interviews for people just to like scare the crap out a little bit, test them out a little bit, see if they're, test their metal. Um,
Yes.
uh, yeah. So yeah, it's just about, I don't know. It's just, it's such a great community. So many of the people in it are, so, people like, Brennan O'Regan, Billy Mickle, Perry, Lee Rummel, Todd Bullock, who I happened to talk to earlier today, um, BT Worley, GM Hooley, who makes all these great um, uh, cards and stuff for the game, these great resources. Like, I'm inspired by those people who were doing things before I was,
Yeah.
right? In the grand scheme of things, I've only been putting videos out since the beginning of this year. There are people who were putting out builds during the playtest. right? Both Billy and Perry have over 400 builds now, just the ones they've published
Oh, it's
publicly.
such a crazy thing. Yes.
That's insane, right? It's in the best way possible. Like
Yes.
people like that are the ones that inspire me. So I just, anything I can do to try and, you know, hopefully do the same for other people and and uh so we can just keep building the community, building the game, more games, more narrators, more fun. The more we do this, the more fun we have, the more people are going to be attracted, the longer the game's going to go on. And just
Yes.
like, CJ said and Forbeck has said, there's a plan for this game for many years to come. I'm like, awesome. I'm
Yes.
in. I'll buy everything. Like,
I
keep it
am
coming.
I'm right there with you. Right
Yeah.
there with you. Um, well, I appreciate you joining me today. Give a shout out to your YouTube channel. You want to tell everybody where to find you at?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure if you just search Fuzzy on the Details Marvel, it'll pop up. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook. Again, it's Fuzzy on the Details. I'm on the Discord. I'm on Reddit. If you want to reach out to me, it's little fuzzy on the details at gmail.com. I couldn't get fuzzy on the details. It's
That's
the
crazy.
only thing I
That's
couldn't
crazy.
get.
Somebody took that already.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have to search that person out and do something about it. It's where the Punisher comics, can be a little bit of a
There you
problem.
go.
But but yes, yeah. So by all means, hit me up anywhere. I'll try to get back as quickly as I can. But I love talking to people, and I'll end by saying, if you're out there and you're considering doing something, whether it's narrating a game, you know, just do it. I went into the YouTube channel having never created a YouTube channel before, never recorded anything before, didn't have a mic, didn't have a webcam, didn't know anything. But if your passion for the game and your desire to have fun is high enough, don't let take it from me. Don't let having no idea what the hell you're doing get in the way of a good time. That's my motto. I often
Yeah.
do things that I have no idea how to do it, and then 6 months later, a year later, all of a sudden you're the expert telling other people, not expert, but you're
I,
a veteran at least telling other people how they can go about it themselves as well.
I get that. I mean, this is year three for us on the podcast, four podcasts later underneath our feed, and it's like we start out not knowing how to do any of this stuff, and we just jump right into it. And here
Yeah,
we
and
are
listen,
over 300 episodes later.
shout out to you guys. I mean, I listened to the most recent Cataclysm of Kang,
Hmm.
fighting the Demolisher, and um, you know, gosh, like you guys are super smooth. Like it is a good listen. And the progress from your first game. I mean, everyone gets better, they do things, but
Yes.
um, you know, you've really smoothed things out to such a good extent. It's such an enjoyable listen. And I think that's evidence right there that the more you do something, like just obviously you got to put the reps in like anything else, like
Yeah.
sports, hunting, anything,
Yes.
right? You're not going to be good your first time out. You're not gonna get the touchdown or get the 8 pointer, antlers, not points in the game.
I knew what you
I
meant.
don't know basketball, but I know basketball enough to know there's no 8 pointers. But yeah, I mean, it's not like you're gonna have wild success your first time out, but if you keep at it and you want to get better, it's inevitable you will get better. And I still feel like I'm learning things all the time with what I do, and I'm at least doing things a little quicker behind the scenes and stuff. So yeah, just keep at it, folks.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you joining me. And I want to talk to you again. I think one of these days
Hell yeah.
I started the series. I don't even remember what I named it at this point. I think it's like, Lethal Incursions, where we pick a random character. We all go against each other. I would love to have you on for one of those. So
That'd be fun. I think I heard one of them before.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get a 2v2 or 3v3 type thing going. So we'll see how
I'm
it
in.
is.
Yeah, let me know.
So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Jordan.